Three friends at the orphanage were enjoying a friendly basketball game shooting hoops when a group of bullies led by Ox interrupted their fun. Kelvin decided to take on the bigger bully in a one-on-one game, wagering his jersey. Unfortunately, he lost, and the bullies cruelly ripped his jersey to pieces. The orphanage director, Mr. Biddleman, regularly forced the children to sell chocolate bars outside the Los Angeles Knights stadium. Though it seemed unfair, this task gave the kids a chance to watch the games on the big screen. However, with the team losing, chocolate sales suffered, and Mr. Biddleman punished the kids by taking away their TV privileges. Kelvin tried to cheer up the Knights coach by offering him a chocolate bar. Surprised to see a young boy working so late, the coach bought one for $20. Kelvin hesitated to accept, doubting that the money truly supported the orphanage as Mr. Biddleman claimed. Impressed by Kelvin's honesty, the coach gave him free tickets to an upcoming game. At the orphanage, Ox scoffed at the idea that older kids like them could ever get adopted, insisting that potential parents only wanted babies. Sister Teresa arrived with a box of donations, including a pair of old sneakers. Kelvin tried the sneakers on and discovered they fit perfectly. Noticing the initials MJ, he wondered if they had once belonged to Michael Jordan. Dismissing Kelvin's excitement, Ox tossed the sneakers onto a power line, calling them junk. That night, unable to sleep, Kelvin decided to retrieve the sneakers. Reggie and Murphy joined him as he climbed a tree during a storm to reach them. As Kelvin grabbed the shoes, a lightning bolt struck the pole, seemingly imbuing the sneakers with an extraordinary charge. The next day, Ox discovered Kelvin had tickets to the Knights game and threatened to tattle to Mr. Biddleman. Kelvin avoided trouble by bribing Ox with extra tickets. At the game, the Knights were down by 12 points and struggling financially. During halftime, a lottery offered a fan the chance to play one-on-one against Tracy Reynolds, the team's star player. To everyone's surprise, Kelvin's ticket was chosen. Ox attempted to steal Kelvin's winning ticket, but Kelvin managed to outwit him and confidently stepped onto the court to cheers from the crowd. Grabbing a microphone, he charmed the audience with a playful speech. Kelvin, now wearing the sneakers, laced them tightly and declared, "I want to be like Mike," before stepping onto the court. To everyone's amazement, Kelvin hit a three-pointer and then dunked the ball, hanging triumphantly from the hoop. The crowd erupted in applause. Meanwhile, Mr. Biddleman, absorbed in his chess game, missed the entire spectacle. After the game, Frank approached Mr. Biddleman, offering $5,000 for Kelvin to sign a one-day contract with the Knights. Reluctantly, Biddleman agreed after the offer was increased. Kelvin was thrilled, convinced the sneakers held magical powers, though Ox overheard and grew suspicious. In the locker room, Kelvin apologized to Tracy and received his official team uniform, including the sneakers. He soon realized his role was merely a publicity stunt to attract fans, not to genuinely play for the team. During the game, the Knights continued to struggle. Kelvin, sitting on the bench, suggested a strategy during a timeout, surprising the coach with his sharp observations. And the coach adds to the tension by substituting Kelvin onto the court. However, Kelvin isn't wearing his magical sneakers. Hesitantly, he steps onto the court but avoids dribbling the ball. He requests a timeout, pretending he needs to use the restroom, and dashes to the locker room to switch into his special sneakers. Returning to the game with boosted confidence, Kelvin instantly makes a difference. As Kelvin's dazzling moves close the score gap, he channels Air Jordan's energy, ultimately scoring the game-winning points. While preparing for an away game, Mr. Biddleman informs Kelvin that, according to the contract, he is now Kelvin's legal guardian for the duration of his time with the Knights, effectively preventing any chance of adoption. On the team's flight, the coach assigns Tracy to share a room with Kelvin, hoping it will help them bond. However, Kelvin's endless energy and antics quickly test Tracy's patience. When Tracy leaves the room, he suggests Kelvin order room service. Thrilled to learn it's free, Kelvin orders an excessive amount of food, far more than he can consume. Upon returning with a date, Tracy is frustrated to find his guest more concerned about Kelvin, who has overeaten. Kelvin apologizes for stealing Tracy's attention, revealing that neither of them has parents. That night, Kelvin's loud snoring keeps Tracy awake. The next morning, an exhausted Tracy is further annoyed when Kelvin casually tells the coach they stayed out late, not returning to the hotel until 1:30 a.m. Despite Kelvin's antics, his presence boosts the team's morale and brings the players closer together. He becomes the face of the Los Angeles Knights, earning admiration from fans and even NBA stars who once mocked him, now asking for his autograph. Using his earnings, Kelvin gifts electric scooters to the kids at the orphanage. However, his newfound fame sparks jealousy in Ox, who begins scheming to steal the magical sneakers again. Meanwhile, Biddleman, seeing Kelvin as his golden ticket, tightens his grip on the boy. Tracy, preoccupied with personal issues, refuses to take Kelvin with him to the pharmacy to buy allergy medicine and sleeping pills. Another player reveals that Tracy's distant behavior stems from unresolved problems with his father. During the drive, Kelvin brings up Tracy's father, sharing how much he wishes he had a dad. At the pharmacy, a flirtatious pharmacist distracts Tracy, leading him to accidentally take sleeping pills instead of allergy medicine. Tracy falls unconscious at the wheel, putting him at risk of missing the midnight curfew, which would disqualify him from the game, narrowly avoiding disaster and arriving just in time. The following morning, Kelvin is benched for his risky actions. However, Tracy, now realizing Kelvin saved him, thanks the young player during their flight. Tracy also helps Kelvin overcome his fear of the dark and prepares him for an upcoming geometry test. Later, Murphy informs a disheartened Kelvin that a group of potential adoptive parents has arrived, but they are only interested in him. Kelvin discovers that Biddleman lied about the contract, using it as a means to forbid his adoption. The troublemakers convince Kelvin that his fame is the only reason people want to adopt him. They assure him they'll find him the perfect parents, but the candidates turn out to be a mix of actors, soldiers, hippies, Rastafarians, and other eccentric individuals. They suggest that Kelvin would be better off staying at the orphanage with his friends. Later, Kelvin visits Tracy's mansion and is blown away by its opulence. Kelvin vents his frustrations to Tracy. His friend is angry with him, the potential parents were disappointing, and he has an upcoming geometry test that he's certain to fail. Tracy reassures Kelvin that the right parents will come along in time and advises him to patch things up with his friend. For geometry, Tracy offers to help him study. To simplify the subject, Tracy draws diagrams on his mansion's walls, using basketball plays as relatable examples. The study session ends with a playful paint fight. When Murphy arrives in a cab, Kelvin jokingly asks Tracy for $49.50 to cover the nearly full fare. Inspired by the lesson, Murphy decides he wants to learn geometry too. With Kelvin's help, the Knights are now just 2 victories away from playoff qualification. If successful, the team stands to earn bonuses and endorsement deals. Murphy suggests that Kelvin doesn't need new parents and that Tracy should adopt him instead. However, Kelvin decides to focus on helping Tracy mend his relationship with his father. Taking the initiative, Kelvin brings Tracy's father to a press conference, but Tracy reacts angrily and sends them away. The team's lack of unity leads to a crushing loss in their next game against a rival team. Despite this, a wealthy and respectable family expresses interest in adopting Kelvin, worrying Biddleman. Biddleman talks to Ox about the magical sneakers, confirming their unique abilities. He convinces Kelvin that the prospective parents might not be a good fit and persuades him to replace the old sneakers with a new pair. Suspicious of Biddleman's motives, Kelvin entrusts his sneakers to Murphy, who tries them on immediately and exclaims, "I want to be like Mike." However, during a jump, the sneakers' power throws Murphy off balance. Biddleman and his cronies intimidate Murphy, even burning a photo of his mother until the boy reveals the sneakers' hiding place. Meanwhile, Kelvin causes chaos while dining with the wealthy family. Confident in his scheme, Biddleman places a $100,000 bet on the Raptors, anticipating Kelvin's poor performance without the sneakers. The wealthy family tells Kelvin they will finalize the adoption the next day, making him officially a Boyd. Tracy, after making peace with his father, comes to speak with Kelvin, but leaves upon seeing the Boyd family. Murphy calls Kelvin in a panic, revealing the sneakers are locked in Biddleman's safe. Kelvin, realizing they're not in his bag, steals a vehicle and rushes back to the orphanage. As the game begins, Kelvin rallies the orphanage kids to ambush and tie up Biddleman, demanding the safe's combination. Ox steps in, and despite Biddleman pleading for help, Kelvin reminds Ox that he's part of their team, not Biddleman's. Offended by being called an idiot, Ox sides with the kids and reveals he memorized the safe's combination. Kelvin retrieves his sneakers, and the orphanage kids race to the stadium on scooters. Meanwhile, Biddleman contacts the bookmaker, who sends men to stop the kids from interfering. Just as Kelvin dropped his sneakers, Murphy, who had fallen behind earlier, appeared just in time to save the day. Near the stadium entrance, Biddleman tried to block Kelvin's way, but Kelvin quickly knocked him out by hurling a scooter at him. As Kelvin ran onto the court, the Knights were already down by 21 points. The crowd erupted in cheers at the sight of him. Tracy persuaded the coach to let Kelvin into the game. With the miracle kid on the team, the Knights immediately started closing the gap. Unfortunately, during a chaotic play, Kelvin's magical sneakers tore apart. Kelvin confessed to Tracy that his success had been entirely due to the sneakers and not his talent. Tracy brushed off his concerns, telling him there was no time for self-doubt and urging him to focus. Tracy's confidence in him motivated Kelvin to give it his all. During a timeout, Kelvin revealed to the team that this would be his final game, as he planned to go back to living as a regular kid. Without the magical sneakers, Kelvin struggled at first, but used his quick thinking and creativity to help the team secure the game-winning 2 points, sending the Knights to the playoffs. Though Kelvin was proud of the win, he felt a tinge of sadness knowing he might never see his teammates again. Meanwhile, Tracy was overjoyed that Kelvin had finally found a family. However, the Boyds, who had been waiting for Kelvin in the parking lot, were left behind when Kelvin decided to return to the orphanage. Back at the orphanage, Kelvin told Ox that the most memorable part of his journey wasn't the fame or the games, but the all-you-can-eat feasts in the hotel. To everyone's surprise, Tracy showed up at the orphanage with the entire Knights team, announcing that they would now sponsor the home. After the big game, Biddleman disappeared under mysterious circumstances, with rumors circulating that he had failed to pay off his debts. Watching Kelvin and Tracy bond, Murphy couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. In an unexpected twist, Tracy decided to adopt both Kelvin and Murphy, making their dreams come true. Over time, even Reggie found a loving family of his own.